The Shooting Range. In this episode, pages of history, the last flight of the Japanese King of the Sky. Tactical briefing, a new section on the shooting range. And metal beasts, the Soviet Fighter-Interceptor with big bombs. What do you get if you mix the excellent heavy fighter TS-MA and one of the most efficient frontline bombers, the Tu-2, the new Soviet attack aircraft, the Tu-1? This machine had been developed as a heavy fighter-interceptor, but never made it past the testing. In 1947, the skies were already full of jet aircraft, so a World War II-era piston twin-engine plane couldn't meet the contemporary requirements. Last century's pilots never got a proper chance to fly out, while you have all the time you want. This aircraft is propelled by two 12-cylinder inline engines. Self-sealing fuel tanks occupy the space in the center of the fuselage, engine nacelles, and the space between the wing spars. The nose hides the radar system. The plane's fixed armament includes two 23mm cannons in the root of the wing and two 45mm cannons under the cockpit. For rear defense, it has two turrets with large-caliber machine guns, and, as if that wasn't enough, it also has hardpoints capable of carrying 450mm torpedoes and bombs with calibers between 250 and 1,000 kilograms. The Tu-1 is officially considered a fighter-interceptor, but the fighter part of it is more of a paper title, since it performs poorly in air combat. The only good thing it has is its firepower, which is more than enough for any kind of flying target. Its flight performance, though, leaves much to be desired. It doesn't have enough climb rate to get you to strategic bomber altitudes, and almost no way to fend off lighter opponents. You could try a frontal attack or rely on your defensive MGs, but still, chances are you'll lose unless your enemy makes a mistake. Which means this plane performs best in mixed battles. That's where the pilot of the Tu-1 can unleash all its raw firepower. So, what do you choose in this wide range of suspended armament? Our first recommendation is the 3 1,000-kilogram bombs. Best option for destroying enemy tanks in bulk. It doesn't even need you to be accurate. A single bomb can wipe out anything and everything in a 10-meter radius. And if you're spotted by enemy aircraft, dropping the bombs is the best way to get slimmer and faster. Of course, the Tu-1's flight performance in mixed battles isn't any better than in air battles. However, most enemies are loaded up with bombs and rockets too, so fighting them will be less, hopeless. The second option worthy of your attention is the 6 250-kilogram bombs. Indeed, they have much less explosives and require a higher level of accuracy. On the plus side, 6 drops have a potentially higher yield of frags and a higher impact on the battle's outcome. And don't forget about your 45mm cannons. They're good enough to pen the roof of any vehicle at that BR. Just remember that diving on the Tu-1 is like using your uncle's backyard water slide. You're very likely to eat dirt. Reserve your guns for light tanks, open compartment destroyers, and anti-air, meaning anything you can hit without pointing your nose too low. Today's story is connected to a mystery that aircraft history enthusiasts and experts have been trying to crack for many years now. It all started in late October of 1937 in China, where the balance of air forces experienced a sudden change. The change had to do with the Soviet pilots in their brand new I-16 planes. Enter the main character, young Lieutenant Dmitry Kudymov. He arrived in China as part of another group of support. There was no time to look around and get used to the new environment, and the new pilots were thrown into the heat of war right away. In between battles and missions, though, the Chinese helped them become accustomed, and once the pilots heard a story of the 4 Japanese invincible kings of the sky. They said the kings were piloting painted fighters, and getting close to them would mean certain death. Despite the legend, the Soviet-Chinese squadrons were slowly getting better at defending against Japanese raids on Nanking City. They had some great luck in a battle that took place between the 15th and the 20th of December, making the Japanese lose a few fighters and bombers and stopping their raid on the then capital of China in its tracks. And that's the time frame of the battle we teased at the beginning of the story. In the early morning of December the 21st, Lieutenant Kudymov was getting his I-16 ready for the next sortie. All of a sudden, he heard the cry of the sentinel. A single Japanese plane was approaching the airfield at a low altitude. That was a critical situation. No other planes were anywhere near full combat readiness, still refueling and restocking. So Kudymov, without thinking too long, jumped into his fighter, ordered the mechanic to start the engine, and began to take off right across the field. The sudden visitor was flying a Mitsubishi A5M. It had only 2 machine guns against 4 of the I-16. Kudymov went for a frontal attack right away, but the Japanese pilot dodged him, which showed he was an experienced ace who knew full well the outcome of such a maneuver. And while Kudymov was furiously turning the landing gear retraction lever, the enemy approached from the rear. Thanks to a more powerful engine, the I-16, with its gear retracted, had better vertical maneuvering and roll rate, and that was the only way for the young lieutenant to avoid being hit. What followed was a gut-wrenching dogfight with each pilot squeezing every last drop out of themselves and their machines. The planes would almost touch each other multiple times, their hulls squeaking under stress, and pilots almost losing consciousness from overload. The airfield's air defense was silent. They were too afraid of hitting Kudymov. The dogfight lasted more than 10 minutes until the Japanese ace made a mistake. He lost the altitude battle and dropped his nose down. The donkey, that's what the Soviet pilots called the I-16, did a better job at diving, however. The end of the lengthy duel was marked by 4 machine gun volleys on Kudymov's fighter, followed by the enemy crashing right into the airfield. A while later, the Chinese personnel managed to identify the crashed plane. Inebriated with the unlikely victory, they were shouting that Kudymov had just shot down one of the kings, the Japanese ace that had more than 50 planes shot down. For that incredible fight, Lieutenant Dmitry Kudymov was awarded the Order of the Red Banner from the Soviet command. And Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek didn't ignore it either. And here's the mystery. Who was that Japanese pilot? In his memoirs, Dmitry Kudymov was perplexed. How could that pilot have downed 50 planes? What was his name after all? We still have no clue, and we don't even know what part of the Japanese Navy he belonged to. Please welcome the new section, the Tactical Briefing. Here, we'll be telling you about all the interesting and important changes in the game brought by recent updates. And for the first debrief, our reconnaissance brought us intel on the latest changes in ground vehicles introduced by Direct Hit Update. The first point on the agenda means good news for the owners of the French Char 25T light tank. Its ammo load has been reviewed to now include American 90mm rounds, including the M82 APCBC on level 3 of upgrades. Thanks to this tank's long barrel, its penetration rate is even higher with the French tank up to 210mm. It's more than enough against many enemies, including the frontal armor of the King Tiger. And most importantly, the Bat Chat doesn't suffer as much from the size of its first-stage ammo stowage anymore, since most enemies would only need a single round anyway. Next point is the reviewed action mechanism for the Contact 5 and Relict reactive armors. APF-SDS rounds are now destabilized by their explosions, which improves protection against hits with impact angles at between 20 and 25 degrees. Of course, it doesn't mean that you need to angle your Soviet MBT with such an armor as much as you would on the KV. They still have enough vulnerabilities, and getting hit in your front wheel is still just as dangerous. So, meeting your enemy with your front is still the better idea. Think of this additional armor as your last resort. Moreover, our recon reports changes in the TOW 2B Roof Crusher. Its penetration rate went down from 430 to 100mm. Now wait, don't rush into comments with this. Its Beyond Armor effect and damage type were changed too. So a good hit can now incapacitate the entire crew of the enemy machine. The only difficult targets would be tanks with reactive armor on their turrets. Now, the Japanese STB-1 saw some changes in its ammo pool too. It lost the explosive shell, and the main round is now an armor-piercing, discarding sabot one. It does have a lower penetration rate, but it's still enough for most opponents. The APDS also has a higher velocity and doesn't trigger from a random picket fence. Moreover, this Japanese MBT now has an improved reload rate. A top crew can get ready for a new shot every 6.7 seconds, much like other tanks with the L7A3 gun. Finally, we're happy to announce that a long list of machines received volumetric armor and parts, including the Tigers, the Centurions, the Chieftains, the Challengers, and many others, totaling 35 vehicles. We've also added physically realistic tracks to 21 more machines with the Direct Hit Update. And for a nice little touch, 30 ground vehicles now have a high-quality animation for spent cartridges flying out. Test the changes and share your impressions. Meanwhile, we'll answer some of the questions you ask us in the comments. The first question was sent by a player called Polak Rodak. Why do planes say that they can go 2000 kph but fall apart at roughly Mach 1.05? Hello, Polak. Maximum speed is only achievable at very high altitudes where the atmosphere is thin. Maximum speed near the ground is expectedly much lower. At the moment, even 1500 kph can only be achieved by a single plane in the game. the Swedish vegan. Error name not found asks, why Jaguars have a tailhook even though it's not a naval aircraft? Hi. Sorry, there's an error where your name should be. The tailhook can be used on the ground too, if the airfield has a resting gear installed. By the way, the French tried using the Jaguar on the aircraft carrier, but the Navy wasn't satisfied with the landing performance, so they dropped the idea. Another question comes from JS Kingdom. Can the slowest plane, BO-2 or Stuka, instead outrun the slowest missile? Neither. That's a simple question. The Po-2 can't outrun the slowest missile even in a long nosedive, much less in a level flight. Duck Mug writes, I recently unlocked the J7W1. Can you give advice on how to use it? Hello, Duck Mug. Take it steady. Avoid turning when you can. Remember its strengths, high speed, and powerful weaponry. And the last comment for today was written by Mike Ickerman. Challenge. Touch as many enemy tanks as you can with the Type 93. Call it inappropriate touchings. Hi, Mike. That's a weird challenge, but we like it. We'll definitely try it. That's it for today. You've been watching The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment, and the next episode will premiere the following Sunday at 4 p.m. GMT or noon Eastern Time. Subscribe and click the bell, because we want you to. And, of course, you don't want to miss our next videos. Don't forget to resupply your donkey. Hee-haw, hee-haw. Leave a like, share your thoughts and comments, and we'll see you next week.